was driving home from a local concert, a little after 2 a.m., when Google Maps sent me down a shortcut I'd never taken before. About halfway down that road, my phone rang. It was my close friend Emily, crying, telling me she'd just been in a terrible car crash, so I went looking for her. My name's Derek. I'm 25 now, and what I'm about to tell you happened a few months ago. I've gone back and forth in my head about whether I should even talk about it because honestly, if somebody else had told me this story before it happened to me, I probably would have laughed it off. I would have said they were tired, imagining things, or maybe just trying to mess with people online. But after living through it myself, I don't really laugh at stories like this anymore. Back then, it was just me and my mom. We had moved from Tacoma, Washington to Centralia, a much smaller town a couple of hours away. Tacoma wasn't a bad place at all. I actually loved living there growing up. There was always something going on. There were people everywhere, concerts almost every weekend, places to eat late at night, and it just felt alive. But over time, it got way too expensive for us, and staying there didn't make much sense anymore. So we packed everything up, found a place in Centralia, and started over. I'm not gonna lie, the move was rough on me at first. If you've ever gone from living somewhere busy to somewhere that feels like it shuts down after dinner, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Centralia itself was nice, people were friendly, and it was definitely more peaceful than Tacoma, but I missed having things to do. I missed being able to text a couple of friends on a Friday night and find somewhere nearby without having to plan the whole thing out. Eventually, though, I found my own way of dealing with it. I started driving out to nearby towns whenever I wanted to do something. Sometimes I'd go catch a local concert. Sometimes I'd meet friends for dinner or grab coffee somewhere that stayed open late. And honestly, there were nights when I had absolutely nowhere to be. I'd just throw on a playlist and drive for an hour or two. If I'd had a rough week at work or just needed to get out of the house, it helped. I've always liked driving at night too. Once the traffic thinned out and everything got quieter, it was easier to relax. It gave me time to clear my head without anyone bothering me. I'd done it so many times that I never really thought twice about being alone on some empty road after midnight. To me, it was normal. It was just something I enjoyed doing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to stop driving late at night because I still understand why people enjoy it. But if you're ever out there by yourself, especially somewhere quiet where there's nobody else around, just be careful. You never really know what might be out there. Like I said, moving to Centralia wasn't exactly easy at first, and for a while, it honestly felt like I'd made the biggest downgrade of my life. But looking back now, if there was one thing that made the move worth it, it was meeting Sasha. We met a few months after my mom and I had settled into town. A mutual friend invited both of us to this little backyard cookout one Saturday afternoon. There weren't many people there, maybe 15 or 20, and I almost didn't go because I barely knew anyone. Somehow Sasha and I ended up sitting next to each other while everyone else was arguing over what music to play. We started talking, and what was supposed to be a 10-minute conversation somehow turned into almost 2 hours. She wasn't loud or overly talkative. Actually, she was probably one of the quietest people there. But she had this way of making you feel like whatever you were saying actually mattered. She paid attention. She remembered little things. If I mentioned I had a stressful day at work or that I was thinking about driving out somewhere over the weekend, she'd bring it up days later and ask how it went. That might not sound like much, but you'd be surprised how rare that is. I was definitely the talkative one between us. I could go on for 20 minutes about a concert I'd been to or some random place I'd discovered on one of my drives, and she'd just sit there smiling, listening, without ever making me feel like I was talking too much. At the same time, I learned pretty quickly that when Sasha did have something she wanted to talk about, it was worth listening. She loved reading. Every time I went over to her place, there'd be another novel sitting on the coffee table. Fantasy, mystery, historical fiction. She read pretty much everything. More than once, she told me she'd always wanted to write a book of her own someday. I used to joke that if she ever became a famous author, I'd tell everyone I knew her before she was rich. She'd roll her eyes every single time and tell me not to quit my day job because my jokes weren't paying the bills. That was pretty much our relationship from the beginning. We didn't have to like all the same things. We never tried changing each other. She never complained when I wanted to spend an evening driving halfway across western Washington to hear some local band, and I never complained when she'd disappear for hours with a new book she couldn't put down. Somehow we just understood each other. Looking back, I think that's what made everything feel so easy. It didn't take long before I met Emily. She and Sasha had been best friends since high school, so sooner or later it was bound to happen. The first time we met, Emily looked at Sasha, pointed at me and said, "Seriously? This is the guy you've been talking about?" Before I could even answer, she looked back at me and said, "I expected you to be taller." I just laughed and told her she wasn't nearly as nice as Sasha had made her sound. She laughed too, and that was pretty much how our friendship started. That was Emily. If she liked you, she'd probably make fun of you first. If she didn't like you, well, she'd probably still make fun of you. Over the next several months, the three of us ended up spending quite a bit of time together. Not every weekend or anything like that. Sasha and I obviously had our own dates, and Emily had her own friends and her own life. But every now and then, we'd meet up for dinner, watch a movie, grab coffee, or drive out somewhere just because none of us felt like staying home. Well, mostly me and Emily. Sasha was usually perfectly happy staying home with a new novel, so half the time, we were the ones convincing her to come with us. Looking back, I'm really glad we did. The funny thing was, somewhere along the way, Emily stopped feeling like Sasha's best friend and just became Emily. Somebody I'd text if I came across a restaurant I thought the three of us should try. Somebody who'd randomly send me a picture of a concert poster and say, "This one's got your name written all over it." Half the time she'd send it just to mess with me because she knew it wasn't really my kind of music. That was just how she was. She liked giving people a hard time, especially if she knew they could take it. There were times when Sasha was busy with work or buried in another book, and Emily and I would end up talking for a while, usually about the most random things. Sometimes she'd ask if I knew what to get Sasha for her birthday. Other times she'd called just to ask if I thought Sasha would like some place she'd found online. Every now and then, we'd end up talking for 20 or 30 minutes without even realizing it. There was never anything strange about it. Sasha knew, Emily knew, and I knew exactly where the boundaries were. We were just good friends, and the trust between all three of us was something I never once questioned. One thing I always appreciated about Emily was how much she looked out for Sasha. If Sasha was having a rough week, Emily somehow always knew before I did. She'd call me and say, "Hey, maybe don't drag her out this weekend, she's exhausted." Other times she'd help me figure out what to get Sasha for Christmas or her birthday because she knew exactly what she'd been talking about lately. Looking back, she probably saved me from buying some pretty terrible gifts more than once. I still remember one birthday when Emily helped me put together a surprise dinner for Sasha. I'd completely underestimated how difficult it was to keep a surprise from someone you lived 5 minutes away from. Every time Sasha texted asking what I was doing, I'd panic and come up with some terrible excuse. Emily thought it was hilarious. She kept texting me things like, "Relax. You're acting way more suspicious than you think." Somehow we pulled it off, and Sasha never saw it coming. The look on her face when she walked into the restaurant made all the stress worth it. That's just the kind of friendship we had. We looked out for each other. Anyway, a few weeks after Sasha's birthday, me and the guys had finally made plans to go see a local band called Northbound Echo. We'd been talking about it for a couple of weeks because everybody kept saying they put on a great live show. We bought the tickets as soon as they went on sale and picked a Saturday since everyone was free that weekend. I asked Sasha if she wanted to come just out of habit, even though I already knew what the answer was going to be. She laughed and said, "You know that's not my scene." I told her I had to ask anyway. Emily had plans of her own that night, so it ended up being just me and the guys. I remember thinking how nice it was to have something to look forward to after a long week at work. Saturday finally showed up, and honestly, I couldn't wait to get out of the house. I'd been working as an IT support technician for a manufacturing company just outside Centralia for a little over a year by then, and it had been one of those weeks where every single day felt longer than the one before. By the time afternoon rolled around, all I wanted to do was hang out with the guys, listen to some good music, and forget about work for a few hours. The group I usually spent my weekends with back then was Mark, Tyler, and Ben. Mark and I worked together, so we saw each other almost every day. Tyler was Mark's cousin, and Ben had been friends with both of them for years. Since I was still fairly new to Centralia compared to them, they were pretty much the group I did everything with. If somebody found a new burger place, we all went. If there was a local concert worth checking out, we'd usually end up going together. It was one of those friendships where nobody really had to plan much. Somebody would send a text, everybody would show up, and that was pretty much it. Before heading to the venue, I stopped by Sasha's place. Since she was basically right around the corner from me, I figured I'd stop by for a few minutes before heading out. She answered the door wearing sweatpants and one of those oversized hoodies she practically lived in whenever she wasn't at work. "You actually made it on time," she said. "Barely." She laughed and stepped aside so I could come in. The smell of fresh coffee hit me almost immediately. "I figured you'd want some for the drive back later," she said as she poured it into one of those travel mugs. I laughed. "You already planning for me to be half asleep on the way home?" "I'm planning for you to not be stubborn. I'll be fine." That's exactly what everybody says. I just shook my head and took the mug anyway. "Thanks. See, you do listen to me once in a while. Don't push it." She laughed again. I stayed for another 10 minutes or so, just talking about random stuff. Nothing important. She asked if I'd text her when I got home. I told her I would. We talked about grabbing dinner together the following week if both of us could get off work early one evening. Then I headed out. Mark had already texted the group saying he was at the venue, so I jumped in the car and started driving. The concert was being held at a small venue in one of the neighboring towns. Nothing huge, just one of those places where local bands played almost every weekend. It was about 45 minutes from Centralia, so by the time I left Sasha's place, I just threw on a playlist, rolled the windows down a little, and headed out. It was still light out, traffic was normal, and before I knew it, I was pulling into the parking lot. The place was already filling up, and Mark was leaning against his truck when he spotted me. "Dude," he called out. "We were about to send out a search party. I literally got here 2 minutes after you." "Yeah, according to your clock." Tyler just laughed. Ben looked at me and said, "Ignore him. He's been complaining since we got here. That's because you idiots made me stand outside. You could have gone in." "Yeah, by myself? No thanks." We stood around messing with each other for another couple of minutes before finally heading inside. There were probably 300 or 400 people there already. The place wasn't massive, but it had a great atmosphere. People were talking, grabbing drinks, buying merch, trying to squeeze closer to the stage before the lights went down. It had that excited buzz every concert gets right before the band comes out. where everybody's just waiting for the first song to start. When Northbound Echo finally walked onto the stage, the whole place erupted. I wouldn't call myself some hardcore fan or anything, but they were honestly really good, better than I expected. The lead singer knew exactly how to work the crowd. People around us knew almost every lyric, and before long, even we were singing along to the choruses we'd only heard a couple of times before. It was just fun. No phones in our faces the whole time, no worrying about work, just live music, a loud crowd, and a few hours where nothing else really mattered. By the time the show wrapped up, somebody looked at their phone and said, "Holy crap, it's already after 1. None of us had even noticed. Like always, nobody wanted to head straight home after a concert, so we stopped at this little 24-hour burger place a couple of minutes away. We grabbed a booth, ordered way more food than we actually needed, and spent another half hour talking about the show. Mark kept insisting the opening song was the best one they played. Tyler disagreed. Ben was still making fun of Mark because he'd completely butchered the lyrics to one of the songs while trying to sing along. It was one of those nights that felt completely normal. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was in a good mood. Looking back now, I don't think any of us wanted it to end. Eventually, though, the bill got paid, everybody started checking the time, and we realized it was finally time to head home. Mark looked over at us and said, "All right, I'm calling it. I'm dead." "You've been saying that since 10. Ben laughed. "Yeah, and I'm even more tired now." Tyler stretched, grabbed his jacket, and looked at me. "You good driving back?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." We all walked outside toward the parking. Mark and Tyler were heading back together since Tyler had left his truck at Mark's place earlier that day. Ben was driving the opposite direction because he lived in another town, so after another couple of minutes of joking around and saying we'd do this again soon, everybody climbed into their own cars. I remember sitting there for a second before starting the engine. The concert had been great. I'd eaten way too much. I was tired, but it was the good kind of tired. The kind where you've had a fun night and all you're thinking about is getting home, taking a shower, and crashing into bed. I plugged my phone into the charger, opened Google Maps, and typed in my home address out of habit. The route I'd used to get to the concert popped up first. It was the same highway I'd planned on taking back to Centralia. Google said it'd take about 45 minutes because there was still a bit of traffic on one stretch. Underneath it was an alternate route, 29 or so minutes. I remember thinking, well, that's easy. I tapped it without giving it much thought. As the route loaded, one small thing caught my attention. The highlighted road that made up most of the shortcut didn't actually seem to have a name. It was just this long stretch cutting through a huge patch of forest. I zoomed in once, then again, still nothing. At the time, I figured Google Maps had probably glitched or just hadn't finished loading everything properly. Apps do weird stuff every now and then. Honestly, I could have cared less. It was after 2 in the morning. I was tired, and the only thing on my mind was getting home as quickly as I could. So, for the sake of this story, I'm just gonna call it the Forest Road. I pulled out of the parking lot, followed the directions for another few minutes, and before long, I was leaving the last few streetlights behind me. The road got quieter. The houses started disappearing. Traffic slowly thinned out until I couldn't see another car in front of me or behind me. The playlist I'd been listening to was still on, and everything felt completely normal. If anything, I remember thinking how peaceful it was. Then the GPS told me to make my next turn. I slowed down, turned the wheel, and my headlights swept across a narrow 2-lane road with dense forest on both sides. Without really thinking about it, I made the turn and drove onto what I'm just going to call the Forest Road. The first thing I noticed was how much darker it was compared to the highway I just left. It wasn't pitch black or anything like that. There were still a few streetlights scattered along the road, but they were so far apart they barely made a difference. One looked perfectly normal. The next one was so dim, it looked like it was about to burn out. The one after that wasn't working at all. And after that, nothing. No more streetlights. Just my headlights stretching out in front of me and trees on both sides of the road. I remember turning the music down a little. Not because I was scared or anything, it just felt like one of those roads where you naturally became more aware of your surroundings. I was still completely relaxed. If anything, I was just paying a little more attention to the road because it was unfamiliar. Every now and then, I'd glance down at Google Maps just to make sure I hadn't missed a turn. The route was simple enough. Mostly just one long road cutting through the forest, but since I'd never been there before, I figured it didn't hurt to double-check every few minutes. A little farther ahead, my headlights caught the outline of what looked like an old gas station sitting off to the right side of the road. It was completely dark, no lights, no cars, no signs that anybody had been there in a while. As I drove past it, I caught myself looking down at my fuel gauge without even thinking about it. Old habit. Whenever I passed a gas station on a longer drive, I'd usually check how much fuel I had left. Luckily, I was fine. I had more than enough to get back home without stopping anywhere, so I just kept driving. The farther I went, the quieter everything became. I didn't pass another car. I didn't see a single house. There weren't any businesses, no convenience stores, nothing. Just dense forest on both sides and the sound of my tires rolling over the pavement. Honestly, it was kind of peaceful. After a while, I stopped paying attention to how dark it was and just focused on getting home. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed in the cup holder beside me. I reached over, picked it up, and glanced at the screen. 2:20 a.m. I still remember the time because, looking back, it ended up becoming one of those details I don't think I'll ever forget. And the incoming call was from Emily. That caught me off guard. Emily wasn't the kind of person who randomly called me that late, so I answered right away. "Hey, Em." For a second, there was nothing except this faint crackling sound. "Emily?" Then I heard her breathing. It was shaky and uneven, like she was trying to speak but couldn't get enough air. "Derek?" "Yeah, I'm here. What happened?" She took another breath. I had a really bad accident." "What?" "My car crashed." Her voice broke, and then she started crying. "I'm really hurt. I can barely move." I sat up straighter and turned the music all the way down. "Emily, where are you?" "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" I think I passed out for a little while." She was struggling to get the words out. "When I woke up, I was outside the car. I don't even remember getting out." That made me grip the steering wheel a little tighter. "Can you stand?" "No." She sniffled hard. "My leg. It hurts really bad. I don't think I can stand up." "Are you bleeding?" "I don't know. I can't see anything." Her breathing got faster again. "I'm lying here by myself. There's nobody around. It's just trees everywhere." "Okay, just stay calm." "I'm trying." "I know. Is Sasha with you?" There was a short pause. "No." "All right. Just keep talking to me. Can you see a road sign, a building, anything at all?" "No." She started crying again. "I'm all alone, Derek. I really need help." "I'm gonna help you. Just tell me anything you can see." For a few seconds, all I could hear was her breathing. Then suddenly, she went quiet. "Wait. What?" "I think I can see headlights." I looked farther down the road, but all I could see was darkness. "My headlights?" I don't know." Her voice sounded a little more alert now. "Maybe. They're getting closer." I slowed down. "Emily, where are you exactly?" "I can't tell." Then she said, a little faster, Can you turn your hazard lights on? I reached over and pressed the button. The green arrows started flashing on my dashboard. A couple of seconds passed. Then I heard her exhale. Yeah. Another pause. I can see them. She sounded relieved. Please, Derek. Her voice cracked again. Just pull over. I eased the car onto the shoulder and brought it to a stop. Emily, I said, I'm here. Just stay where you are, okay? I'm coming. Oh, okay. She sounded like she was trying her hardest not to break down again. For a moment, I just sat there, staring through the windshield. Every direction in front of me was just dense forest. I picked up my phone, switched the call to speaker, and stepped outside. The difference hit me almost immediately. Inside the car, I hadn't realized how quiet everything really was. Out there, the whole place felt unbelievably still. The only sounds were the faint hum of my engine behind me and Emily's shaky breathing coming through the speaker. I'd turned on my phone's flashlight. Behind me, my headlights lit up the edge of the road, but once the pavement ended, the only light I had was the narrow beam from my phone. Emily, I said, sweeping the flashlight slowly across the trees. I can't see you. I can see your lights. I moved the flashlight from one side to the other. Nothing, just trees disappearing into the darkness. Where are you? There, right there. I still don't see you. A few seconds passed. Then I heard her take another shaky breath. Just come a little closer. I stepped off the pavement. Dry leaves crunched beneath my shoes. Small branches snapped every now and then as I carefully watched where I was putting my feet. The ground wasn't flat, and every couple of steps I'd catch a root or a patch of loose dirt hidden beneath the leaves. I kept moving the flashlight slowly from side to side, trying to see farther than the light would let me. Emily? I lifted the phone a little closer. I'm here. I still can't see you. You will. Just keep walking. Looking back now, I know you're probably wondering why I didn't turn around and leave right then. Honestly, this was Emily, one of my closest friends. She'd just called me crying, telling me she'd crashed her car and couldn't even stand up. If we'd switched places, I know she would have done the exact same thing for me. So I kept walking, slowly, one careful step after another. After another few seconds, something crossed my mind that I couldn't really explain. Emily was still breathing hard, but somehow, her voice didn't sound quite as panicked as it had a minute earlier. It wasn't a dramatic change, just something I noticed. At the time, I figured maybe she knew I was getting closer. I guess just knowing somebody was almost there to help her had calmed her down a little, so I didn't think much of it. Then she spoke again. Turn a little to your left. I slowly turned, raising the flashlight in that direction. At first, I couldn't make out anything, just bushes, tree trunks, darkness. Then, something shifted. I froze. The flashlight stayed fixed in that direction. For a second, all I could make out was the outline of someone standing perfectly still between the trees. I didn't move. Then, slowly, the figure took one step forward, another. It slowly stepped through the bushes and into the beam of my flashlight. The second I saw the face, my heart skipped a beat. It was Emily. For a second, I just stood there. Emily. The relief hit me so fast, I don't even know how to describe it. I took a couple of quick steps toward her. Oh my God, are you okay? She looked like she'd been through hell. Her hair was messy, with a couple of leaves caught in it. She was wearing a black sleeveless top, denim shorts, and white sneakers. There was dirt smeared across one of her legs, and her face looked pale. Her eyes were watery, she was breathing heavily, and one hand rested against a tree like she needed it just to stay balanced. "Wait, how are you even?" The words caught in my throat. I was about to ask how she was even standing. Barely a minute earlier, she'd been telling me she couldn't even move her legs. Before I could finish the question, she said, "Derek, I had a really bad accident." Her voice still carried that same panic. "I'm really hurt. I can barely move." For a second, I just listened. Then something suddenly hit me. Emily wasn't holding a phone. I frowned. I looked at my phone. The call was still connected. She kept talking. I think I passed out for a little while. She was repeating the same thing she'd already told me over the phone. I could see the words coming out of her mouth right in front of me. And at that exact same moment, I could hear those same words coming through my phone. I didn't understand how that was even possible. Something felt completely wrong. Without even thinking about it, I took a step back. "Emily, hey, what's wrong with you?" She didn't answer me. Instead, she just kept talking. "My leg. It hurts really bad." This time, something sounded different. She was still breathing heavily, but the words came out more clearly. She wasn't struggling to get them out anymore. A second later, she spoke again. "I'm lying here by myself." The panic that had been in her voice only moments ago was fading, sentence by sentence. She sounded calmer, steadier, like nothing ever happened. And somehow, that scared me even more. Then, her expression began to change, very slowly. The fear on her face, it just faded away. The corners of her mouth started lifting, higher and higher, until that smile stretched across her face. It wasn't a normal smile. I can't really explain it, but it was creepy as hell. Something that made every instinct in my body tell me to run. So I did. I turned around and sprinted back through the trees. Branches scraped against my arms as I pushed through them. Dried leaves crunched beneath my feet. I nearly lost my footing twice, but I didn't stop. I didn't dare look behind me. By the time I reached the road, I was completely out of breath. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. My hands were shaking so badly I fumbled for the lock before finally hitting it. I grabbed the steering wheel with both hands, trying to slow my breathing. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I just sat there staring through the windshield, trying to make sense of what I'd just witnessed. Then, knock. Something tapped against the driver's side window. Not loud, just tap, tap, tap. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. For a second, I couldn't even bring myself to look. Then, slowly, I turned my head toward the driver's side window. Emily was standing there. Her hair was still a mess. Her face was pale. Her eyes looked watery. She was breathing hard. One hand rested gently against the window. "Derek, please, take me to the hospital. My leg. It hurts really bad. I can't stay out here. Please, you have to help me." I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to unlock that door. She just stood there, looking at me, waiting. Then, something changed. Her breathing became steadier. The fear slowly disappeared from her face. And then, that same smile came back. She didn't say another word. She just stood there, smiling at me through the glass. I couldn't look at it anymore. I turned my face away and squeezed my eyes shut. Everything went completely quiet. Then, Derry, look at Mommy. I couldn't even process what I just heard. Only my mom ever called me Derry. Whenever I'd get scared as a kid and hide my face or shut my eyes, she'd gently lift my chin, smile at me and say, "Derry, "Look at mommy." Hearing Emily say those exact words, I don't even know how to explain what that did to me. Without even thinking, I opened my eyes and looked back toward the window. Emily was still standing there, that same smile. She was just staring at me. Our eyes met for barely a second. I immediately turned away again and shut my eyes as tight as I could. No, this can't be happening. This isn't real. Then I heard a vehicle coming up behind me. Its headlights suddenly lit up the inside of my car. I opened my eyes. I turned back toward the driver's side window. Emily was gone. The truck slowed down beside me. An older man rolled his window down and looked over at me. "Hey, son, you all right? Car giving you trouble?" I just looked at him for a second. Then I finally managed to answer. "Yeah, I'm okay. I was just leaving." He gave me a small nod. "All right. Drive safe." He pulled away. The second he drove off, I started my car too. I just wanted another car in front of me. I didn't want to be alone out there. We drove the same way until we reached the highway and eventually went our separate ways. The rest of the drive home is honestly kind of a blur. I don't even remember most of it. My mind just kept replaying everything that had happened out there. About 15 minutes later, I finally pulled into the driveway. I walked inside. My mom was still awake. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, how was the concert, Rockstar?" I barely looked at her. "It was good. I'll tell you about it tomorrow." I went upstairs, collapsed onto my bed, and I don't even remember falling asleep for the next few days. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. I wanted to tell someone, Sasha, Emily, anybody. But every time I thought about bringing it up, I stopped myself. Because honestly, how was I supposed to explain any of it? A few days later, I met Emily and casually asked her what she'd ended up doing the night of the concert. She told me she'd gone over to her friend Jessica's place for a movie night and crashed there. Then she looked at me and asked playfully, "Why? Were you missing me?" I just shrugged. Haha. Yeah. Then I changed the subject. I never brought it up again. Honestly, the more I thought about that night, the more questions popped up. There were things I hadn't even noticed back then. I was too busy trying to save her. Emily told me she'd crashed her car somewhere along that road, but I never saw a car. Not on the side of the road, not between the trees, nowhere. And then there were the clothes she was wearing. I clearly remember how cold it was that night. I'd zipped my jacket all the way up before I even stepped into the woods. But Emily was standing out there in a sleeveless black top. No jacket, nothing. It made no sense. It's been a few months now. Sasha and I are still a thing, and yeah, we still see Emily every now and then. She's gotten busy with her own life, so not as often as we used to. Life just moved on. But even now, not a single day goes by where I don't think about that night. I still can't get that creepy smile out of my head. Damn, it scared the shit out of me. And then hearing it call me Derry and saying, "Look at mommy," the exact words my mom used to say whenever I got scared as a kid, just gives me a headache trying to make sense of it. But man, whatever happened that night wasn't normal.